So we're going to run you today through a warm-up cycle or a sequence. You guys have probably seen this on the main site, but it's called slips, and it's a series of gymnastics movements and gymnastics warm-ups. And Katie and I are going to run you through showing you an example of what this is going to look like. We're going to set you up on a version that's appropriate for each one of you. And then we're going to set time domains on each piece. So we're going to run through the cycle 2 times, but let's go through what slips means. It's going to start with scales. We'll demo each piece of this, but I just want you to be aware of where we're going with this. You're going to start with a scale, both a front scale and a back scale. We're going to do that for a 20-second time domain and then a 10-second rest on each side. And then you're going to move forward. So you guys can see how the parallettes are set in front of the boxes. You're going to step forward into some version of an L-sit, and we'll go through a lot of different versions that's appropriate for each one of you. You're going to step forward either onto a box or against the wall, and you're going to do some version of an inversion. So for some of you, that's going to be getting upside down. For some of you, it's just going to be learning to load the shoulders a little bit. Lou, you're looking at me like I'm crazy. I promise I'll take care of you. For some of you, it may be holding a weight overhead and starting to stabilize that. We're then going to go into a series of plank holds. So straight arm plank hold, showing you how to do that with maybe one arm, one leg, opposing arm and leg, and going through some versions of that. And then just some simple stretching at the end to hit both upper body and lower body. My hope, you guys, and Katie and I will show you this, but is that you're always kind of moving in either forward or in a circle. So you're kind of staying in a lane. That's why we have it set up this way. It's going to be a little bit easier for you guys to control that. And there may be a couple people in your lane. That's totally fine. Like I said, we'll find a version of this that fits for each one of you so that you're not competing for equipment, but that you're always kind of moving forward. Questions on this? Okay, so Katie and I are going to run through this. If you guys can do me a favor and just kind of stay kind of semicircle off to this side just so everyone has a view of this, that would be great. We're going to start with what's called a scale. So there's 2 versions of this. There's a front scale and a back scale, and we're working primarily on balance in the scales. So the ideal on a scale is that we're doing this without any assistance at all. We have the boxes set up here in case you need some help with balance or stability. So you have the option of moving this box higher if you need to. But let me show you where we're going if you can. Katie's going to start on one leg. She's going to find her balance point. Arms come out to the side. Let's do the front first. And then she's bringing that front leg up to a 90-degree angle. Okay, we're holding that for 20 seconds. She's going to bring the leg back down. Might be that you can do that with maybe less height, but you can still do it without a box. So again, planting, but maybe she's bringing the leg even lower. Find that spot where you can do this unassisted. Okay. We're going to do that, again, 20-second hold, 10-second rest, and then we're going to switch sides. If you need the box, she's going to step closer to the box. She can do exactly the same thing where she's finding that balance point, but maybe she's using this box just to let herself stay stable. I only want you using it as much as you absolutely need it, so don't just hang on to the box because it's there. I want you to challenge yourself a little bit with the balance piece of this. Yeah, exactly. Okay, questions on the front scale? Okay, we're then going to switch and we're going to go to what's called a back scale. So same basic premise, but now the leg comes in back. Take note, you guys, that ideally I want this nice and stable. She's not just bending at the hip. She's trying to keep herself in this nice planked position and then comes back up to the top. Same thing, 20-second hold, 10-second rest, and then we'll switch sides. You also have the ability here to start to use the box if you need to, and we can just do a little finger tap and hold that as much as you need to kind of stabilize yourself. The height is also adjustable just like it was on the front side. So if you need to, maybe she's not coming quite as high, but she can hold that position unassisted. I'd rather see that than you just jump to the box. So let's play around with those positions a little bit. Questions on the front and back scale? Pretty straightforward. We've been working a lot on this as far as balance stuff. Sometimes we do that with a medicine ball. I know at the 10 a.m. class we've been working a lot on that. So this is just kind of a step forward for what we've been working on in here. Okay, from there you guys are going to step forward to the parallettes. And we're going to do a version of an L-sit. So I'm going to start with the ideal and then we'll work our way back to what your options are moving forward. With the parallettes, I want those hands right outside your hips, and ideally we're looking for a 90-degree angle with both those legs up. Good, you can rest. Okay, the lever arm, we can play around with that a little bit. Maybe we do one leg out and one knee bent. We're still using the parallettes. This is a really good scaled version of this if it's something new to you, or maybe you're not quite ready to hold the full L. Great, start there. We can also bring that lever arm even shorter and just do a curl, where she's bringing her knees up, but we're still stabilizing on the parallel. Take note, you guys, can you come back up to that knee position? That her hips are still underneath her shoulders. She's not leaning herself forward on this. That's going to change the position of this. So I want you guys, if you're going to use those, and I think you should, try it, be mindful of where your position, where your body is in space on those. Okay, if the parallettes are causing an issue, then we can start to step away from that and give you a stable base on the floor. So ideally, Katie's going to bring her hands pretty much close to her hips, try to lift these heels up off the ground and simulate exactly what's happening here, but we don't have the instability of the parallel. She can do exactly the same cycle. Maybe it's one knee up, one leg out. Maybe it's both knees if she's bent. That's fine. We can also make this easier by scooting her hands back. So if she leans back, now the shoulders take a little bit more of this, changes the angle so she can start to lift the heels up off the ground. So play around with some of those positions so you can find some stability there. Okay, if that becomes challenging, then we can also do this on a box. Okay, so now we're going to use the stability of the box, and you can actually hang on to the back edge of this box to give yourself some stability there and bring the legs out. Same cycle we showed you here. It could be one leg, it could be the knees are a little bit bent to do this, but we're still engaging that midline that we want to start to increase the strength in. We're just taking some body weight off of it on the box. After the L sit, guys, we're going to move over to the wall. So I'm going to have you guys scoot up here so you can see what Katie's doing. We have Dsolumer mats out on the floor. So those of you that are kicking up against the wall, that are comfortable kicking up into a handstand, try to find a station where you have a mat just for your little noggin's safety on that one. But ideally, we are using the stability of the wall. Don't feel like you have to do this freestanding, even if you're pretty proficient at the handstand. I want Katie to kick up. She's going to find that stability against the wall, and the goal on this inversion is that we're controlling the descent. So she starts to curl the knees down as slow as possible, and we're trying to make that roll out of that as fluid as possible. Okay, there may be a point that you reach, for sure, when I reach a certain point, I just fall out of that. That's pretty normal. What we're trying to do is increase that strength a little bit so you lose that spot where you don't have any strength. So that was beautiful what you just saw. If you're proficient at that piece, you can also start to maybe roll back up. I'm not going to ask Katie to do that, but if you want, you can play around. Carrie, you might be a good candidate for that. Boz might be a good candidate for that. But certainly you can make those challenging or more challenging if you would like. Okay. It might also be a shortened range of motion. So maybe she's just bringing her knees down and then rolling out of the handstand. That's fine. I want you to just play around with that a little bit. If kicking up against the wall is not going to be in the cards for you today, then we're going to go back to the box and we can start to load the shoulders in a different way. So ideally, you guys, I want you to try to simulate this position that she was up against the wall. So she's starting in a pike position, the legs are straight, and she's loaded the shoulders. We've done these as a modification for handstand push-ups in here, so this should be familiar to most of you. If the pike position is challenging, then she brings it down to the knees. We've taken some of the body weight out of this, a little less taxing on the shoulders, but we're still trying to load that a little bit. She can walk her hands back towards the box a little bit in this position and really start to challenge herself here. Okay. If being on the box, this position is challenging for you, then I still want you to try to stabilize some weight overhead. We're going to start with a little less stable weight, and that's the kettlebell. So the head of the kettlebell comes up towards the ceiling. This is going to want to roll out of your hands, so you're going to have to stabilize this by gripping these. But look at where she is in space. That's a nice narrow grip. I don't want you out here. Take note that her biceps are right by her ears and she's punching those up to the sky. Okay, it's a good way to start to challenge the shoulder stability. But if the kettlebell gets a little squirrely for you, then we can take that down another spot and just go to plates. Same thing, I still want you to challenge yourself with the width. This is going to be aggressive for those of you that have some shoulder stuff going on, maybe mobility issues, but we don't have the squirreliness of the kettlebell. Questions on inversions? Okay. From there, you guys, we're going to go into different forms of a plank hold. So we want you to start hands directly underneath the shoulders. Take note of her position here. She's in this nice planked position. The hips aren't too high or too low. She's nice and level. This is where you're going to start. Arms are straight. We're then going to start to challenge you by taking some of the extremities out of this. So one arm comes back towards the hip. She's still in this position, so she's not rotating as she's doing that. She's keeping her hips level. Brings that hand back down, and then we switch sides. Okay? Now we can do the same thing with the legs. She lifts one leg up. Again, she's maintaining this nice plank position, and then we switch sides. Lou, you are looking at me like I've lost my mind. Okay. Wait till this one. Last one. If you can, then I want you to go opposite arm and leg. Yeah, buddy. There we go. Same thing on the other side. And rest. Okay. On the plank, I want you guys to play around with the positions and find what's challenging. If the opposite arm and leg isn't going to happen, it could turn into almost like taps. You don't have to hold for a sustained period of time. Maybe you're lifting and coming back down like that, but you're still challenging yourself with those positions. So don't just throw it out because you can't hold the whole duration. I want you guys playing around a little bit with those positions. Questions on this one? Okay, the last one is a couple different versions of stretching. This is all stuff that we've done in here. But if you'll notice, we have bands hanging on the bars. We're going to do a couple upper body stretches and a lower body stretch. So the upper body stretch, I'm going to have Katie hook the band around her elbow. She's bringing that elbow back against her head. She's going to lunge forward and hold this stretch. So we're getting a little bit of a tricep stretch in this. You can gauge how much or how little you want based on how far you step forward or how far you lunge forward. She's going to come out of that stretch, reset her arm to a 90-degree angle, and then lunge forward again where now we're getting a little bit more stretch through the pec. Okay, so don't let that arm drift up to the sky when you're doing this. I want you always pulling straight down so you're getting a good stretch through that. Okay, we're going to do a couple holds on that, and then you guys are going to move back to the benches. And we're going to do a hip flexor stretch on the bench. So you can gauge this as much or as little depending on how mobile your hips are. Could be that she's starting right here and just starting to shift forward a little bit. That might be enough stretch for a lot of you. Hang out there if that's the case. We can increase this stretch by scooting back towards the wall, giving herself a little bit more stability behind her, and now shifting her hips even further forward. That will increase that stretch on the hip flexor. We can then increase that even more by bringing the arms up overhead and adding in a little bit more of a Samson stretch on the bench. Okay? You can rest. So depending on where you are on this bench, even if you're in the middle of the bench and you aren't able to get all the way back against the wall, I do want everyone to try to add in the overhead on that finishing hip flexor stretch just to try to increase the range of motion a little bit.